Good morning, everybody. If you want to take a seat, we'll get started. Welcome to the International Republican Institute. My name's Lauren Craner, and I'm very pleased to have you here at the 7th installment of our Democratic Governance Speakers Series. The series is intended to bring policymakers and practitioners together to discuss contemporary challenges to governance and share ideas and experiences on how to effectively address these challenges. We at IRI are fully aware that democracy is about more than elections, and that in fact for most people the most important part of democracy comes between elections. I often say people love being able to cast a ballot every 4 or 5 or 6 years, but if they can't feed the kids in the meantime and the roads are not improving and the garbage isn't getting collected, democracy doesn't look so good, and that's when countries start backsliding. And as a result, in our programs, we work to strengthen the capacity of governments and promote greater accountability by elected officials. We also work on the demand, what I call the demand side of governance, the civil society side, so that they can advocate before governments and perform the ever-important task of oversight. As many of you know, we were founded in 1983. We'll begin our 30th year, to assist activists struggling for freedom all over the world. In December of 1989, the Mongolian Democratic Union became the first political force to challenge the single-party system in Mongolia, the communist system, and they did so with public demonstrations and organized hunger strikes. In 1990, a democratic revolution led to the government of Mongolia amending the constitution to allow opposition political parties, and IRI began working in Mongolia in 1991, focusing on the multi-party system, on building capacity for the parliament, and working within the expanding space. More recently, we have worked in Mongolia to help improve government responsiveness to citizen priorities, to develop mechanisms for meaningful, inclusive, and participatory decision-making at the local level, and to enhance the ability of local public officials to advocate to authorities at the highest level of government. We're very pleased, therefore, to host today's discussion on governance in Mongolia. I'll be turning over the proceeds in a moment to my good friend Alphonse Porta. Al and I have known each other for many years. He worked for 38 years at the State Department, serving as U.S. Ambassador to Mongolia from 1997 to 2000. He also served as the political advisor to the commander of NATO forces in Naples from 2000 to 2003. Other assignments were overseas in Indonesia, Malaysia, New Zealand, and Turkey. He was also special envoy to the Philippines and assisted with the Cambodian genocide investigations, and as we were just discussing, he's president of the Malaysia-America Foundation. I also want to note our guest speaker, who is an old friend of mine. IRI first began working with Bat-Üül, who was one of the revolutionaries in the square in the days that I just talked about. But he was one of the fathers of Mongolian democracy. We honored him and President Mikula Dzerinda of Slovakia a few nights ago, and we did so in part because of the role they had in bringing democracy to their countries. But we're especially proud to be associated with Mayor Bat-Üül and with Mikula Dzerinda, because they not only help bring democracy to their countries, and they not only are leaders in their countries, but they are leaders in their countries because of how well they governed after they came into power. So we're very proud to have him with us today. Ambassador Al, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lauren, and we appreciate the hospitality of the International Republican Institute, and major kudos on your long existence and all of the enormous contributions that you have made. I will also... We're in business now, I think. I think it is very strong testimony to IRI that, Lauren, you have had such a long and personal involvement with Mongolia. And I think that those of us who have worked on the other side in Mongolia really have appreciated the incredible support and steadfastness that IRI has shown to the cause of democracy in Mongolia and good governance in Mongolia over the long span of years. So this morning's meeting, in my view, is quite important in terms of uplifting the challenges of governance and where Mongolia is since the 1989, 1990, 1991 revolution and the evolution of democracy and government in Mongolia. I would also remind everybody that Mongolian language interpretation is on channel 1 and English is on channel 2. So just to make that clear. What I think we want to do this morning is to talk a bit about governance in the broad sense, and in particular hear from the mayor, Bat-Üül, about his current experiences and what he has been doing in Ulaanbaatar to bring government closer to the people. And good governance has as its objective not only money, resources, and projects, but also understanding and hearing and understanding the people's aspirations, what they need and what they want to be able to live a better life, and to get some responsiveness from their government. And it is in that context that we will welcome Mayor Bat-Üül's comments. And then Alicia Campi, president of the Mongolian Society, is going to give us a bit of a historical perspective on the development of democracy and governance in Mongolia from her own experiences. And lastly, Steve Saunders, president of the North American Mongolia Business Council, is going to kind of raise a few issues on constitutional problems or aspects of the constitutional part of governance, and also talk about some of the future challenges. We hope that after about 30 minutes of discussion then to have an open forum and be able to engage Mayor Bat-Üül in a broader conversation. So with that, I'll ask His Excellency the Mayor to start our meeting with his remarks.
First of all, thank you very much for welcoming me so warmly. IRI administration, thank you everyone. With this chance, I would like to thank special assistance and support that have come to advancing democracy in Mongolia from IRI side. Mongolia, you might be familiar with the geography of Mongolia. We have two large neighbors, and we had only less than 2 million people fighting for democracy in Mongolia. And the work toward democracy has not been easy. Mongolian American community, American administration have been a lot of support, and I would like to thank again and again. And I would like, as a mayor of Ulaanbaatar city, I would like to speak about Mongolia and Ulaanbaatar city as a mayor. First of all, the Ulaanbaatar city's development toward 1930s, 2030 have been passed in Ulaanbaatar. And the development plan has been developed by Japanese experts. The plan being passed means that it is a very important, significant legal document. According to Japanese experts, the plan will be implemented until 2030. It is not only, it will take $9.8 billion for the development of Ulaanbaatar city. In addition, the transitioning of Girhorolol suburban districts toward apartment complexes will take about 24 trillion tugriks, 24.5 tugriks investment. I think Mongolian tugrik is about $1,700 right now. And with all of this finance, the plan will be implemented. In order to implement this development plan, the mayor office will need to, first of all, focus on eliminating corruption in the mayor's office and Ulaanbaatar city administration. The reason for that is the plan that was done in 2002 that will be implemented in 2020 and the plan could not be implemented, and the reason for not being implemented is because the city administration has been in corruption, had a lot of corruption, and made it impossible to implement the plan. Therefore, we needed to renew the development plan. Because of that, it has been one of the most significant aspects to improve the governance. Having a corruption-free governance, I believe in that. I believe in having corruption-free governance. If we can do that, the third thing that I would like to say is the economic market will be free, will be transparent, and it will be impossible to develop Ulaanbaatar city. As I said earlier, we need an investment of 24.5 billion tugriks. Trillion. 24.5 trillion. And we need this kind of investment. Therefore, it is very important for us to have this investment in order to implement the plan. And I will go into details when we go through questions and answers. Thank you very much. Thank you, Porta.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And now we'll pass to Alicia.
I come today to provide some historical perspective to Mongolia's embrace of democracy and free market economics during the past 23 years. I'm able to do this because I was fortunate enough to be in Mongolia in early 1990 at the U.S. Embassy and was an eyewitness that march to the street protest movement against communism, led by young Mongols such as the mayor, the late S. Zurich, and now President Elbigdorj, which resulted in the fall of the communist government that had been in power 70 years, and the early steps taken to transform the entire Mongolian economic and political system. During that first decade of change in the 1990s, I was in and out of the country about 25 times for research and business projects, and my travel to Mongolia continued at regular intervals in the succeeding decade. I believe part of the problem that foreign observers have in today's Mongolia is the lack of any real historical understanding of the country, and so fall into the trap of just reporting and analyzing events more like a collection of snapshots, which fundamentally enlarges Mongolia's problems and minimizes its very real accomplishments. Such a perspective also makes it nearly impossible to predict its future behavior because there is no understanding of the fundamental currents and themes underlying Mongolian history, including this new democratic era. My first visit to Mongolia was in 1975, during what the Mongols have called the golden years of Soviet President Brezhnev and Mongolian Premier Tsendal. Agricultural negdals, or communes, and state enterprises dominated the communist economy. Although I returned as a diplomat in 1990 to seemingly similar economic conditions, the political environment was in fact very much bubbling with enthusiasm for new changes that Gorbachev's brand of Soviet glasnost and perestroika allowed. Eastern European educated Mongolians were strongly influenced by the Solidarity movement in Poland. All Mongols, including the Politburo members, were shocked by the events in Tiananmen, where the communist leadership murdered their own children and colleagues, and were determined not to replicate that experience. This is in large measure why Mongolian demonstrations were well managed by the protesters, and the government, police, and army exercised great discipline in preventing chaos. As a result, Mongolia experienced a tense but peaceful ending to communism without violence or retribution squads. This story is not well known today, but stands as a very great accomplishment of bravery, persistence, patience, and national reconciliation that can be a model to other societies. Mongolia's peaceful democratic process to dismantle communist structures in the 1990s was accomplished at great economic cost to the nation. We must remember that the collapse of the Soviet Union, which provided for 1/3 of Mongolia's budget every year through its Kamikon system, resulted in very difficult times. There was hunger and food shortages in the cities, yet there were no riots or violence. Mongolian policymakers decided to establish both a stable free market and democratic society concurrently, a most unique path that other former socialist nations making the same transition did not have the confidence to embrace. The U.S. believed Mongolia was a model for other countries, and the Congress particularly lauded and financially supported the Mongolian model. The second U.S. ambassador to Mongolia, Joseph Lake, in 1992 proclaimed, quote, "This is a place where Americans, if we believe what we say about democracy and free enterprise, can affect the future. The Mongolians are now trying to restructure their economy and their government on the basis of the ideas we believe in. If they succeed, this country as an island of democracy could be very important to the world." End of quote. Those words can be seen as prophetic because it is irrefutable that Mongolia stands today in Central Eurasia as the greatest success in its eco-political reform and development among the nations emerging from the Soviet system. The transition was especially difficult if one understands that Mongolia did not have the underpinnings of a modern nation state to rediscover and build upon. Its heritage was a nomadic economy of herdsmen loosely controlled externally by a distant Manchu Chinese imperial system for 300 years, and domestically governed by a princely class dating back to Chinggis Khan's Mongolian Empire of the 13th century, and a Buddhist, Lamaist religious government headed by a Dalai Lama-like figure. For Mongolia's leaders, from the communist-trained Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party, as well as the many young democratic movement activists, to embrace a modern-style constitution in January 1992 with representative parliamentary democracy that has been flexible enough to guide the country through great domestic and global changes is really a modern miracle comparable to the founding fathers of the U.S.'s own Constitution. Have all the legal ups and downs over the past 20 years been correct or effective? Obviously, no. But has the direction the country followed been one persistently towards greater human economic and political freedom? The answer is unreservedly yes. We need only to look at Mongolia as compared to the Central Asian republics and Russia itself to conclude that the country is doing it right. Mongolia has been an outstanding example to all of Asia in the field of free elections. This was not an easy thing for a country with no experience in elections. The IRI, with USAID and Department of State funding since 1992, devoted funds to train Mongolian politicians of all political persuasions in party building and campaigning, with emphasis on election monitoring, fairness, and education of the electorate. When Mongolia experienced election violence in 2008, it sent shockwaves through the society, which retaught all political parties the core values behind fraud-free elections, political accountability, and accepting the final outcome of elections. Mongolia had no free press in 1990. Now it has the most vigorous free press in the region. It went through a period of yellow journalism, but learned that with free speech comes responsibility. The U.S. particularly has been active in the training of journalists to higher standards. The NGO movement, created solely in the democratic era with much U.S. and Western support, I would suggest is the most vigorous in all of Asia and completely in tune with Mongolian sensibilities and concerns. including the fact that it is very decentralized and perhaps too fragmented. The free press and more informed electorate are the reasons for real hope in success from Mongolia's anti-corruption drives during the past several years. As one who saw the hidden but pervasive corruption during the communist era, the fact that a different form of corruption became exposed during the era of the dissolving of the large state enterprises in the 1990s, and then again with the expansion of the mineral-based economy in the new millennium, is something to praise Mongols for, not condemn. The problem is now in the open and being dealt with. The measures may not be sufficient or completely effective, but at least the problems are publicly recognized, and the government is being forced to respond. Such progress is commendable, although incomplete. As for foreign policy and national security, Mongolia has emerged from an isolated, ignored country in 1990 to an increasingly active player in Asian regional economics and politics and in global peacekeeping. There are definite patterns emerging during the presidency of President Elbig-Dorj, who is redefining the fundamental third neighbor concept originally proposed for Mongolia by U.S. Secretary of State James Baker in 1990. Mongolia believes it has lessons to share with other nations, be they North Korea or South Africa, and is moving to assert a more public stance commensurate with its rising economic power. Former U.S. Ambassador Jonathan Adelton noted this fall that when he arrived in Mongolia in the mid-1990s as USAID director, Mongolian per capita GDP stood at $300. But when he ended his tour as ambassador in 2012, it had risen to $3,000. This is a positive news story that needs to be told, and it is behind the more global ambitions held by what I term Mongolia's wolf economic strategy. So in conclusion, Mongolia's story during the past decades cannot be divorced from the history of Asia, including that of its giant neighbors, Russia and China. However, Mongolia is not Russia or China. All three nations have experienced the collapse of old orders, swept away by nationalism and revolution in the 20th century, and have been reborn in today's interconnected global world. Mongolia has its own story of fighting for self-determination and national integrity, and the United States has been a part of that story, even though our own official bilateral political relationship did not begin until 1987. The Mongols first sought concrete American assistance to bolster their sovereignty in 1918, and they still seek it today. We two nations have forged a strong, comprehensive, bilateral relationship during the past 2 decades, and this fact, together with the great economic and political progress Mongolia has made during the same period, must not be overlooked when discussing present-day challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alicia. And I think you've uplifted many, many valuable points. I will have to say I'm in agreement with all of them. So let's move on to Steve and get his remarks. Thank you.
Circling back to one of Alicia's comments about the similarities between Mongolia and the United States in terms of the evolution of democratic practices and forms. I'd like to just talk with you for a few minutes about the development of the forms and patterns of governance in Mongolia since the adoption of the new constitution and the first elections under that new constitution in 1992. The North America-Mongolia Business Council represents Canadian and American companies and organizations that are invested or active in Mongolia. And let me tell you the two things that the NAMBC has learned in the last 23 years. Number one, Mongolia and Mongolians, including the bulk of the political leadership, has always been interested and continues to be interested in best global practices. Best global practices. There is absolutely no resistance to adopting a technique, an idea, an approach, a technology that wasn't invented here. The Mongolians don't want to simply muddle through. They want to produce the best possible result. Now that speaks to intention. The other thing we've learned is that Mongolia has one of the best track records in the world of countries willing to reverse and correct mistakes. If it doesn't work, they go back and fix it. They don't paper over it. They don't say, there are no euphemisms for programs or laws or regulations that are simply ineffective. They change them. And very often they say, that was a mistake. Now, if you don't think that's unusual, perhaps you haven't lived in Washington. But where the closest we usually come is a very passive circumlocution, as in the phrase made popular by President Nixon, mistakes were made. Fortunately, the Mongolian language does not have the passive voice. And so it comes out as my mistake, our mistake. And those two traits are, I think, an important insight into understanding and admiring the way Mongolia has conducted itself. In the midst of an economic crisis, the like of which it is almost impossible for Americans to imagine, from 1989 till 1992, Mongolia had a constitutional convention in the Little Horal and then in the first elections to parliament. And they wrestled with the same concepts and ideas which the American founding fathers at the Philadelphia Constitutional Convention grappled with. What should be the extent of executive power? What should be the role of a parliament, and so forth. And they made very definite decisions. Number one, they did not want to permit the emergence of an authoritarian individual leader. The Constitution was designed in a way to frustrate the rise of a cult of personality, a man on the horse who would control the government for 20, 30, 40 years, as had been the case with Sendenbal and before him Chaibulsan. So there were a variety of compromises reached. And then in the years since then, they have had to interpret those and decide how to adapt them for current needs and conditions. Mongolia in the early 90s, after the withdrawal of the Soviet aid, after the collapse of their entire global trading system, which had been run out of the Kamikon in Moscow, the economic condition of Mongolia, as revealed in a Harvard study several years ago, was worse than any other former Soviet satellite or former Soviet state. The analogy that scholars at Harvard came up with was that Mongolia's economic condition in 1990 was more similar to Japan in 1944 or Italy in 1943. But still, in the midst of hunger and discontent, no electricity, no fuel, no jobs, no food, they sat and deliberated to come up with what is indisputably the single most democratic constitution within 3,000 miles of Ulaanbaatar. And it endures to this day. How that has evolved has been interesting and problematic. For example, it was never clear, even though the commitment of Mongolia was to a parliamentary democracy, they had never had one. And so they had to make it up as they went along. They had to invent it. For example, traditional parliamentary democracy posits that the leader of the largest party with seats in parliament becomes the prime minister. Mongolia never adopted that. After the defeat of what is now called the Mongolian People's Party in 1996, up until that point, yes, the prime minister had been the chairman of the largest party in parliament. But when the Democratic Party came in, they said, there's nothing in the Constitution that says the prime minister has to be a member of parliament. And there was a vigorous discussion, a scholarly inquiry, and all in the open. And it was decided, no, there's no need. So Mr. Engsaihan, who had been chief of staff to the first president of Mongolia, became prime minister in the first Democratic Party government without being elected to parliament. Current President Elbig-Dorj, the second time he was prime minister in 2004, 2006, he was not a member of parliament. In a parliamentary system as practiced in the West and in Japan, members of the cabinet are traditionally drawn from members of parliament. That has not always been the case in Mongolia. It was a mixed system. And what Mongolia has come to today is a finding that in a country like the United Kingdom, where there's a 1,000-year history of bureaucracy, virtually uninterrupted, and where there is sufficient bureaucratic support, maybe it's okay for every cabinet minister to be an MP because the bureaucracy runs the government. Maybe in Japan for the same reason. That's okay. But what the consensus in Mongolia is today is it doesn't work here. That ministers are unable to do a good job either as an MP or as the head of a government ministry if they hold both jobs. And so again, there's been a reinterpretation of Mongolian parliamentary democracy, with Parliament passing a law that, effective, I think, 2016, it will be prohibited for a cabinet minister to be a member of Parliament because they have decided they need full-time members of Parliament. Let me conclude just with some brief observations about capacity. Mongolia has been forced to run very fast just to keep from falling behind. There has been a huge amount of improvisation. But as I said, the Mongolian government and the Mongolian leadership has always been very open-minded to foreign suggestions, foreign recommendations. The problem is that even though many of those foreign best practices were embraced, Mongolia, for most of the last 23 years, has not had the human resources capacity to administer those laws properly or transparently. This is not from any lack of will or intelligence. It is a simple fact of education and training. The government which democratic Mongolia inherited since 1990 was a government whose culture was based on fiat and to certain ironclad patterns. Well, it takes time to change those. In the early 90s, the United States and other donor countries funded MBA programs, MBA scholarships for Mongolian students. Unfortunately, in some years, even though I think there were 20 MBA scholarships a year, Mongolia could only fill 8, 10, 12 of them. But the important omission, as we look back, is the lack of MPA graduates, Masters of Public Administration. And the difference is, if you have an MBA, that's a license to coin money. MBA means more money on a career track. MPA, Masters of Public Administration, means at the end of the day, you have the satisfaction of being a patriot. The cost of an MPA is not very different from an MBA, but the downstream rewards of an MBA are arguably better. So I think that's one of the, even today, one of the opportunities for Mongolia, for donor countries, for corporations that have a philanthropic commitment to Mongolia, is to fund some mechanisms whereby a large number of career civil servants, a large number of career public servants in Mongolia can receive a master's in public administration. One way to do this, and the easiest way, instead of sending people expensively overseas, is to work through the newly founded American University in Mongolia to get an American MPA provider from a reputable university to set up a program there. Problem is, it's chicken and egg. Somebody has to commit that, yes, you will have 20 students a year, and some source, be it the government or somebody else, is going to pay for those 20 MPA a year commitment, because without a certain guaranteed student population, it becomes impossible to bring in the foreign professors and so forth. In any case, the NAMBC has been in existence for 23 years. At no point have we ever become pessimistic. There are some days that are better than other days, but the reality is that because of people like Bat-Üül, because of government leaders in all parties in Mongolia, not just the Democratic Party, but political leaders in all parties who are trying every day to do the best they can for their country. It's a good reason to keep working hard in behalf of Mongolian development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve, and thank you also for ending on a very positive and productive note about the need for quality in public administration. And with that, I would like to just uplift a few things that have emerged during Mayor Bat-Üül's tenure since he became mayor of Ulaanbaatar almost a year and a half ago. And I visited him about a few weeks after he took office, and I will have to say I could already hear the earthquake happening in the city administration as he began to talk openly about anti-corruption, the need for change, but also the need to improve the livelihoods of people in the Ger districts of Ulaanbaatar, and there has been major progress in developing projects funded by the Asian Development Bank, and in which there's also some U.S. involvement. Also, he has revived the plans for a metro underground subway in Ulaanbaatar. I don't want to make any invidious comparisons with Washington, D.C., but we hope that the planning is better. Also, the mayor has started initiatives for the greening or re-greening of the city and restoring some of the open civil spaces to their intended use, such as playgrounds and meeting areas in the city's apartment projects. He's also stimulated new developments in building very large apartment developments with the idea of providing adequate housing to all of the city's residents and soaking up some of the rural to urban migration that has really stepped up its pace in the last really almost 10 years. And then also it is rumored, and I haven't witnessed this, but I'm told that there are bans on smoking in public places, either intended or planned. So, and that would be a true milestone in Mongolia's civil development if that proved to be the case. But let me now turn to the mayor again and get him to talk a little bit about the kind of overall objectives from the public administration standpoint and the governance standpoint for his own tenure as mayor.
Bairsa, thank you. Excuse me? No, it's okay. Earlier in my statement I said talking about me, talking about anti-corruption, you might be surprised that I'm talking about it again and again. But in our country, corruption has already reached a very difficult threshold. As Mr. Porta said earlier, I'm building roads, I'm building constructing buildings, apartments. If people are interested, I will talk more in details. But on improving the governance, I would like to talk about improving the governance in Mongolia. When I became the mayor of Ulaanbaatar city, the land issue and the corruption surrounding it corruption had already absorbed the land management issues, and it was become common to see corruption in land management. Also, giving out construction permits has become corrupted. In addition, tender systems had also become corrupted. In order to fight all of this, it is very necessary to become transparent. Now in Ulaanbaatar, giving out lands has now become public. With public participation and being transparent. And broadcasting publicly, that's how we now resolve land management. Especially in areas populated with residents, giving out land will be processed after discussing with the public. In addition, technical difficulties, specifically with heat and electricity, is a big issue during construction of buildings. Yeah, and we started to discuss all of these issues in the public with the public participation. In addition to this, giving out all of the public officials' decisions has now to be broadcasted in 3 days. And now we have a new policy that if these decisions by officials are not broadcasted on their website within 3 days, they will not be permitted to be implemented. And all of our decisions from our office are now being communicated to the public. In addition to this, we have now made the budget issues very transparent to the public. For example, the expenditures and the budget plans have now become transparent and open to the public. For example, if the public wants to see what financing Mr. Bat-Üül is using to come to the United States, they can now do so. In other words, all of the expenditures, all of the transactions have now become visible and transparent to the public. My second thing that I'm doing right now is reducing bureaucracy surrounding public services. Now it is possible to go online and to internet and see what service issues, complaints, or requests from the public are being implemented or are being seen by officials. Now people can just go online and see all of this. And now we issue yellow cards to officials who are taking a long time to process requests and complaints from the public. For example, issuing land permits used to take about 61 signatures and used to take about 107 days. Now everything now this process is being done only in 30 days and requires only 4 signatures. Now, for example, the number of construction permits that are being given to has now increased by 60%. And according to the World Bank ratings, Mongolia had moved up by 25 points in terms of construction ability to compete in the construction business. We used to stand at the 132nd. Now we stand at 107, 132. Oh, and my ambition is to become in the first 10. And the third thing that I would like to highlight is that we now involve public participation in making policies and making decisions. As I said earlier, building buildings in populated residential areas now requires participation of the public. And it is it is very difficult to do this. For example, when I tried to get a permit to build a state building, I could not get a permission to do so from the public. And the public was right, because if we built the building, it would have blocked the view from the windows from the residential buildings. And on the other hand, not getting a permission to build this building, it also brought a problem to the city administration. And when I went out there to resolve this issue and surveyed the public, I got a 99% of refusal, and we had to not build the building. Most importantly, we made the public realize why it is so important for them to participate in decision making. The buildings that we build determines the value of the buildings that you live in. And of course, if you build not good, bad construction buildings, then the value will drop. And now the citizens of Ulaanbaatar now realize they are right, and they always get involved in in giving out permissions to build buildings. And also, we also went out to the public, to the very grassroots level, in past October and November to discuss the 2014 budget of the city. And so in accordance to that, the New Year's 2014's budget has been approved and developed. And in the next year, we're planning to give out 15.2 billion tugriks in micro loans to the public. And this means that to each horo, it will be about 100 to 200 million tugriks in loan. And now the community and the local administration will decide who. And now only the locals, the citizens, will decide who will get these microloans. And another example is we're now starting to ask the public and residents whether to give out alcohol permits or not. For example, in the past, someone gave out 30. Someone gave out 36 alcohol beverages to just one horo. And now, without the public approval, no alcohol permits will be given out. And in this and other ways, we are now implementing public participation in decision making. And another work that I would like to highlight is now that the residents will decide on their neighborhood development, how and what they would like to do, and in accordance to that, the administration will allot the financing. And for these projects, we are planning to give out 44 billion tugriks. And in addition to this, we started to ask for public participation in city-wide policies. For example, I asked the public whether to allow cars with the wheel on the wrong side to participate in Ulaanbaatar transportation. And 82% of people, the residents, did not like the idea and refused. And I wanted to conduct another survey among the public, but the president, Dr. did not like that. And the reason why I wanted to do in a secondary survey was that I thought I had miscommunicated what I meant. However, the president said that once the public expressed their opinion, it is what they wanted. And in similar ways, we now conduct, ask for public participation in all that we do. And now I'm working into further advancing transparency services without bureaucracy and further advancing public participation in all that we do in the city.
That opens up some very interesting questions. I think that, as most of us know, Mongolia has one of the most highly centralized bureaucracies among Asian countries, and I'd like to ask the mayor, to what extent are his objectives of transparency and popular participation being recognized and maybe adopted by other municipalities and by IMAG governments and others in the country?
President Elbuktarch told me the Ulaanbaatar city's model will be an example toward other administrations. And Erdeniin and Arhang cities in Mongolia have also started implementing the transparency works that are being done in Ulaanbaatar city.
Please.
Value of Mayor Bat-Üül's administration as a model really cannot be overestimated, not only among other municipal and provincial governments, but also in the national government. You know, for example, one of IRI's real accomplishments in Mongolia was to get Parliament to adopt a law on Parliament to establish certain procedures. And I think this was done, Ed, what, by 2000, right? 2000, 2001, something like that? And yet, this parliamentary procedure law requires Parliament to have hearings, public hearings on bills. And Parliament ignores its own rule. President Elbig and the Prime Minister have strenuously urged cabinet ministers who are each very much independent, almost feudal political leaders on their own, to be more open, more transparent. But that has not happened as quickly as it has in the UB city government. You have to bear in mind the city and capital district of which Bat-Üül is mayor and governor is pretty much half the population. The next largest city is 10%, less than 10% the size of UB. But all the national ministries are citizens of the capital district and the city of Ulaanbaatar, and that the influence and the expectations among half the nation's voters as to why transparency and broader participation of citizens in decision-making is important is having an impact. But still, programs that the mayor is trying to implement in many cases have been blocked or stymied because of non-transparency within the national government ministries. And I wanted to ask the mayor about one in particular, that the mayor had been a very strong supporter of, an Asian Development Bank program, which I believe the mayor had asked for in order to relieve traffic congestion. And one of the key parts of this ADB program, fully funded, I don't know how you talked them into funding it, but the mayor got the ADB to say, okay, we'll pay for the whole thing, is a fast bus transportation system where perhaps you've seen this in other cities. There would be a center island reserved for buses and a center lane reserved for buses, which would massively affect and clear up traffic congestion in UB. And yet a cabinet minister, who shall remain nameless, in the Ministry of Economic Development, managed to block this for months for no reason that anybody knew. But I saw recently, am I right, that this has now been approved by the Economic Development Ministry? And I wonder if you could just talk a bit about that.
Asian Development Bank. Yeah, with $500 million investment financing from the Asian Development Bank. We're planning to build vice administration centers for 6 towns. And a day before yesterday, this program has been finally approved and signed. And this program will start being implemented in April. And luckily, all the works that are being done by the city administration is highly liked by the residents of the Ulaanbaatar city, are being valued by Ulaanbaatar city residents. And therefore, the state government is now being forced to accept city administration's decisions.
Let me expand the argument just a bit. Alicia, could you just comment a little bit on the question of kind of the centralized administration in Mongolia as a whole, and how you would see the prospects for kind of reform or changes in governing patterns?
One of the things I emphasize when looking at Mongolia, when talking to Westerners, including Americans, is be careful what you wish for, because in Mongolia you're going to get it. And one of the things about Mongolian democracy is that in Parliament, people really represent their constituents. And if you look at the balance in Parliament, population-wise, compared to the representation in Parliament, the countryside people have what would be considered by most analysts as an overrepresentation in the Parliament. So if that situation is going to continue, which there are reasons why it's likely it will, But nevertheless, that has been the situation in the past 20 years. And what we now have, especially in the past 10 years or so, when we have the development of mineral resources in the mineral sector, which has affected greatly the Mongolian economy and how it relates to its development program. You have the situation where development of mineral resources were centralized, as described, in ministries in Ulaanbaatar, but the deposits which were being worked or are scheduled to be worked, licenses held, exploration projects undertaken, are all taken outside the capital in the countryside. So the people in the countryside originally did not have a voice in deciding who got licenses and how these licenses were distributed. But because of the democracy that exists inside the parliament, we had parliamentary members in the past 10 years increasingly reflecting the discontent of the countryside populace. And there was a demand for decentralization of power to grant licenses, to make decisions for local people at the center in Ulaanbaatar. And through various demonstrations and pressure on the parliament, the parliamentary members have initiated a decentralization process within the government that is very obvious during the past 10 years, which reflects the decision-making power arrangement in Mongolia. Now, this is disconcerting to foreign investors who think that because of the process of getting a license, getting permission, understanding the system of investment in Mongolia, that they should be negotiating with officials in the national government who have the authority in the Mineral Authority or in various other agencies and offices to direct them on the best way for them to proceed through to negotiate contracts and to get licenses. But they have learned in the past, particularly the past 5 years, that this process is more complicated because there has to be local input. And this process, which is accelerated under the Elbig-Dorj presidency to bring the local voice of the people, constituents who are very different than the urban base that we see most foreigners dealing with, is a process that is difficult for the average outsider. But it is a process which is going to continue, in my opinion, because if you're going to have public input into the capital city development and administration, one naturally should have public input in the countryside where you have mining development and other forms of industrial construction. We recently just had a protest by people near a major mine out in the Gobi who protested the plan for a new railroad development. It's not that they were protesting that there be a new railroad. They didn't like the path chosen by the government authorities because they said it interfered with certain environmental and traditional herding practices. So this is, like it or not, a phenomenon of democracy. And democracy exists not just for people in the capital city, but also exists in the IMAC and in the SUM or county level. And it is a factor that will affect both domestic government and foreign investment as we move forward.
Quickly, because I wanted to go to the floor and we wanted to reserve the time for the audience.
Just a footnote to what Alicia correctly observed, that this the devolution of authority has proceeded apace, And in principle, that's a good thing. The permissions law passed several years ago gives, for example, IMOG provincial governors, in effect, a veto on local mining development. The problem is that the procedures and criteria need to be improved. From a business standpoint, this is injecting a crazy eights factor. In some provinces, this permissions regime, the home rule regime affecting mining, works well. The governor, some governors bring people together, much as Mayor Bat-Üül brings people together in UB, and say, okay, we want this mine because there will be jobs, but what does that mean? And in some cases, the governor says, oh, you have to build this road here, you have to do this and this with water supply, you have to build a school. In other provinces, sometimes the governor asks for things that are not appropriate. And so this, like several other things in Mongolia, remains a work in progress. It's a great idea, but it's a system that, as Mongolian leaders know, still needs to be improved and clarified.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Let's go to the floor now, and if you could, those asking questions or wanting to make comments, if you could identify yourselves and give your organizational affiliation. So the floor is open. We do have microphone here, so seize the microphone. There.
Hi, I'm Julie Pikowski. I'm with the Asia Bureau at USAID. And I just wanted to ask Mayor Bat-Üül how he felt about using Ulaanbaatar as a model in not only Mongolia, but in other countries, particularly countries like Timor-Leste, where Dili is very far behind where UB is and could really benefit from the lessons learned. But I was also wondering if you would be willing to also learn from municipalities that are further ahead. For example, Jakarta, while it's much larger in scale, they have done a lot to curb corruption and build capacity, and there's some lessons to be learned from that. So in general, I guess the question would be how he felt about partnering with other municipalities in the region. Thank you.
Энэ иргэдийн оролцоо шийдвэр гаргах энэ төсөл бол энэс бас Jakarta-с ихтэй бусад жижигхэн хотод зарим нэг хотод бол
the involving public participation in decision making is now, I think, being implemented in small towns in Indonesia besides Jakarta. We also went there to gain experience, and we are learning from them. And Tbilisi in Georgia has also accomplished a lot in terms of providing services without a bureaucracy. And we're also learning from them. And Seoul is one of the leaders in using internet and technology in showing transparency in their works. And we're also learning from them.
그들이 넘어야 된 대인들이 인터넷에 올때 이 미술을 실제죠.
And we are now transitioning to publishing all the tenders online, internet. And we are learning from others. In addition to that, other countries such as Russia and China and cities that neighbor with us in those countries are also learning from us. And I'm glad to say that. For instance, officials from Ulaanbaatar and Irkutsk arrived in Mongolia and asking and learning, wanting to learn from us too. And officials from Iran and in China also arrived in Mongolia to gain experience. And so I believe that if we are successful, they can also learn from us and gain experience. And I think that our transparency and providing our services and works and being transparent will be useful in having they learn from us.
If I could just make an editorial comment. I think that Jakarta, under its new mayor, Jokowi, who's been in office about the same time as Mayor Bat-Üül, has made some incremental progress, although, as you noted, it's a much larger city, population-wise and area-wise. But there are common problems in many major urban areas in the Asia region, and beyond that in Central Asia and other areas, Russia, as the mayor noted. It seems to me that many of these areas can learn from what Mayor Bat-Üül is trying to do in Ulaanbaatar, and I think that there maybe can be scope for setting up a municipalities league or something like that in the Asia region to kind of promote kind of cross-development of cross-fertilization of ideas and governance approaches. So maybe you had the seed of a very good idea. But more often than not, it's been one-on-one. It's been bilateral and not very coherent, but maybe a League of Cities approach might have some possibilities for creating some dynamics. Maybe that's an area for Mongolian leadership. I don't know. But I just wanted to uplift that idea. Okay, another question or comment? We have a microphone. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jen Gongcross. I'm from the U.S. Department of Commerce. My question is, what is the city administration of Ulaanbaatar doing to resolve the issue of smoke? For example, if you're partnering with specific companies or working with specific countries to resolve the issue. Thank you.
인지를 단에 썼을 때를
Now, this year in Ulaanbaatar city, in order to fight the air pollution, we have distributed 42,000 mini warmers. So, And we have also distributed environmentally friendly this coal.
We also distributed environmentally friendly smokeless fuel to.
Fuel, yes, thank you. Yeah, fuel. Unfortunately, one of the unfortunate things that happened was that the prices for this had risen up. And what happened was the price of the coal, low quality coal from Bagnor had dropped. And despite us distributing this stoves and fuel, air pollution ironically increased. And I'm trying to go back and discuss this with higher officials too. I believe that there is only one solution in eliminating air pollution, and stoves and fuel are just temporary solutions. And that one solution is providing heated apartments with electricity to residents.
Questions? Here, why don't we take two more? One up here.
Bat-Üül 100, Bayrte, Tavte Mororo, Nameg Natangerik, Tharin Department, Achatak. So my question is more about your vision for the city of Ulaanbaatar. As a mayor, your vision for the physical infrastructure of the city, I'm interested in. Your vision for parks, roads, pedestrian infrastructure, and perhaps even many big cities around the world are using bike share programs, like we have in Washington, D.C., in Paris, and Copenhagen. So any more details about your vision for the physical infrastructure of Ulaanbaatar?
Энэ ирээдүйн Улаанбаатарын тал хөгжлийн тухай маш их зүйл ярьж болно.
I can talk a lot about the future development of Ulaanbaatar city. Next year, we're planning to build very large bicycle roads in Ulaanbaatar city, along the Thor River and Dund River. In addition to that, we're also planning to build bicycle lanes on Ulaanbaatar city roads. And I'm trying to build a capacity for allowing more bicyclists and less car transportation in the city. And in addition to that, I'm working on building public transportation that can reach even the farthest point in the city. And I'm working on reinforcing green development and protecting green development. And all the land permits that were given out for the lands along the Thor River, I made them illegal now. And similar to the parks along the Potomac River, I would like to build parks and recreation areas along the Thor River. Along the Dongol too. And I've already started the construction projects, some of the construction projects this fall. And most importantly, I'm working on building an environmentally friendly city. And when I come back to Ulaanbaatar soon on the 22nd of January, I'm going to hold a meeting with the public that is called Friendly Ulaanbaatar. And I have a lot of projects for this Friendly Ulaanbaatar program.
Just would like to say publicly, and I'm a little bit cautious about this because actually my comment is a recommendation to limit the power of Ulaanbaatar and therefore its mayor in the public life of Mongolia. But I think that Mongolia on a national level has got to face the fact that it can't sustain its country if one half of the people live in the capital city and one half of the rest of the people are spread out over a huge area of the country the size of Western Europe. So although such plans of the mayor are very valuable and good, in reality, there are certain steps that are being taken, such as moving the airport further away, out into a neighboring IMAC, building up a city near that, which will accommodate up to 200,000 people. And we've got to have a revival of reasons to live in the IMAC centers outside of Ulaanbaatar. And by making Ulaanbaatar such an attractive place, unfortunately, the mayor is going to compound the problem. But it is an issue of how to build cities more efficiently around the whole entire country. That is a matter not only of economic welfare, but national security for Mongolia. So I hope that his ideas are, in fact, spread and are successful elsewhere. Otherwise, this model of development is not sustainable.
Time for one more quick question.
My name is Thor Halvorssen. I'm a retired partner of the law firm of Covington and Burling. I'll ask a question that perhaps only a lawyer would be inclined to ask, but I think it does relate to governance. And the question is about the court system or the judiciary in Mongolia. And the question is whether the court system is independent. Are the justices or judges appointed for life, or are they elected? Is the court system effective in upholding the rule of law and enforcing contracts? And that's essentially what I'd like to have some comment from any of the panelists who have views on that matter. Does the court system, for example, have the right, as in this country, to declare acts of parliament in violation of the Constitution?
I can take a crack maybe at a few points. Mongolia does have a constitutional court, and the Supreme Court began to kind of undergo reforms in about 2000 with a judicial reform strategy that was approved by Parliament. Unfortunately, it's not been completely fulfilled, and 3 years ago, President Elbek-Dorj, on the basis of a national survey, began a new reform project for the national judiciary, and I believe it's now in its second year of implementation. I'm not sure how well that is going, and it may need more help, but I'd like to ask the mayor about kind of the progress of the president's judicial reform program and where that stands.
오늘은 신 호일전사 대모친 그때 호일지자로 호일전사였던 거죠.
Mr. Mr. Timuchin has been appointed as the Vice Minister of Justice, and he is working on the reform of the court system, and his work will also start. This work will start in January of this next year. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, judges are being appointed for their life, and also having transparency in the judicial system is also being included in the reform plan, if I'm not mistaken. People who are being affected by the judges' decisions can now see and have a right and ability to watch and see the decisions. For now, Ulaanbaatar City's judicial system works independently. For example, in the past, I disqualified permits and licenses of 47 organizations, but the city judicial system declined this and reversed the decision for 17 of these organizations. So I had disqualified land permits for 47. Yes, 47 land.
There were about 47 orders, mayoral orders to issue lands or to cancel the issuance of lands to certain people. And he canceled those and nullified those 47 orders, previous mayoral orders. But the city court ruled that 17 of them were and he couldn't nullify them.
With that, I think we've reached the end of our discussion. I would like to thank you, the audience, for being patient with the simultaneous translation. Also, I would like to thank our panelists, Alicia, Campi, and Steve Saunders, and most especially our featured guest, our guest of honor, Mayor Bat-Üül. I think all of us can wish him all the best in terms of achieving his objectives for the city, and I hope that we will continue to improve governance in Mongolia and the progress of democracy in Mongolia as he goes on and through his administration. So thank you very much.